Hi, everyone. So excited to welcome Maude back to the stage. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me.
Maude, you are a registered dietitian and you have so much knowledge in this space to share with parents. And I know we can't possibly get them on video and on podcasts because there's just so many topics and so much about each topic. But today we're going to be talking about picky eat or preventing picky eaters.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, just share with everyone, for those that are listening and watching for the first time, a little bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm a pediatric registered dietitian. I have a private practice that's called Family and Co-Nutrition. We're online. We support parents throughout the first years, specifically with picky eaters who are just having a hard time feeding their kids. We do that online, so that helps us reach a lot of people throughout the province and
Love that.
and
Country
country.
and world. Yeah.
Exactly. And in addition to supporting parents, I also teach and I do research so that we can really make sure that we have the best way to support parents and also kids, obviously, as they're
Yeah.
learning to eat. Yeah.
That's great. I love that we can bring experts like you to all the new and expecting parents out there because, sadly, when I had my kids, there wasn't this much resources out there. So it is just incredible that there are, experts like yourself who have learned so much about one particular thing in parenting, because we know, and we've said this so many times, it really does take a village.
It
And
does.
these days we're resorting to Dr. Google and Dr. Facebook, which can give us so many different pieces of advice. And that's one of my advice that I give to parents is find a couple of real people that you trust, whether they're family or friends or experts, few people, real life people that you trust. And that's why I love doing these recordings with you, because we can share some of this factual information from an expert. So thanks for joining us today.
Super pleased to be there.
So Mo, today, preventing picky eaters.
Yes.
So give us a couple of snapshots of things you've heard from parents over the years of what experiences, complaints, concerns they've had.
Yeah. So first of all, I hear from all parents who have a picky eater that they think they are the only one who are struggling. They think it's their fault. They think that they are the only one who cannot feed their kids. When really, most of my practice is to support parents of picky eaters. So by all means, you're not alone. It doesn't help because you're still feeding often, very, very often, someone who's very, specific about their intake. But I just want to reassure you that you're not the only one. It's not your fault. But at the same time, I want to encourage you, if you are stressing out about feeding your kids, reach out, because you can do a lot of things to help improve the situation. We are not dependent on your kids to take ownership of this situation and solve the problem. We can work together. And it's easy to reason with like a parent, much easier than a toddler. So to me, that's encouraging, because we can, put strategies in place, work together, and really tackle that. And the strategies for preventing picky eating is this, that's the same as conquering. So if you have been challenged with a picky eaters, these strategies and tips will still apply. So that's great, because if you have other kids, other siblings, or anything like that, you learn it once and then you apply it throughout their life to all kids.
I love that. I know that some of our clients that we work with who are, in the toddler years and doing solids, that they're finding their kids are, making requests for food and then they don't want what they just requested. So can you tell us what would a parent do in a situation like that?
Absolutely. And it's okay. It's actually healthy, and it's developmentally appropriate for children to make requests, to say no, to change their mind, to push the boundaries. We know that. But at the same time, you're the parent. So this is your permission to own it and stay firm and say no. And it's actually an act of loving your child to maintain boundaries. And feeding is parenting, and to conquer picky eating or prevent it, you are in charge of putting boundaries. You are in charge of being the leader in the kitchen and around meal times. So if in the specific example that you give, if your child is asking for a toast with peanut butter and then you serve that, you go to the extent of doing it, serving it, and then you're like, no, I don't want this. Then you are in charge of saying something like, I understand you don't want to eat this. That's what's on the menu. If you're interested, it's there for you. Otherwise, we will have snack at whatever time, or we will have lunch after we play. you maintain the boundaries, because as soon as you give in, the cycle starts and they call the shots, and that's when you kind of lost your power, and they're really like the boss, and that's when you have to cook 2 meals and do everything that they ask, and that's, you're going to go crazy, and that's not serving you and that's not serving them. So kind
Yeah.
of like going back and putting the boundaries and the structure is really what I help parents do.
Yeah, and I love that because I think a lot of us parents struggle with that boundary. Are we creating a boundary or are we being mean? And
Yeah.
I always tell parents, being mean is not feeding your child.
Yeah.
Being mean is not giving your child what they asked for and then not making something new. So
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up. Another issue I've heard parents say is that they can't get their child to sit down at the table, that they're chasing their child with the spoon and the
Yeah.
spoon and the food to get them to eat.
Yeah.
So again, is that a scenario of boundaries? What would you say to a parent in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you feel mean when you always have to say no and don't do this and don't do that. And that's because you're reactive. You're reactive to their behavior. And I really want parents to be proactive. A step back. What are you doing in, like, when you're in control, to create that structure, that routine that will support everyone, so that you don't have to say no often, because you have been in charge and you have been clear on what's going on. So first of all, also, like, it's not your role as parents to feed and to get your kids to eat. Straight as it is, it's not your job. You're not going to ever force a kid to eat. You can try, it's not going to work, I'm telling you. We've got enough evidence it's not working. Your job is to provide. You provide a structure, you provide a place to eat, you provide a menu that's adequate, and then they decide. And for those of you who are like, well, if I do that, my child is going to like just let themselves starve, get in touch. I don't want to say it's not possible, but I think, sometimes we have fears as parents that we need to, address. And sometimes there's obviously issues with kids that we need to address. So we don't want to go to these extremes, but in most cases, it's really getting back in control that will help. And for that example of like kids who don't want to sit and you're chasing them with the spoon, again, are we clear on the structure? Do we have a routine that they know when to expect food and what is expected of them? Do they know that they are supposed to sit for a certain amount of time and what kind of behavior they want or they have to do? Are you modeling? Are you modeling that you can always go up and down and go in the kitchen and come back and be on your phone and read it? Like, all of that is going to be part of your kind of family rules, and not rigid rules, but just what is welcomed and what are behaviors that we don't do around meal times.
Yeah,
And
I
that's going to
love
be
that.
different for every families.
I
Yeah.
love that. You touched on a few things. One of the things is you have to plan, like you said, being proactive, what parenting strategies you're going to have in advance, so that when you're hit with
Yeah.
that moment of decision, you know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I always tell parents that, if your plan is you sit at the table and eat, and that's your boundary, is that you're only going to eat at the table. And then one day your child says, but I want to eat in front of the TV, or I want to walk around and play while you feed me, and you allow that, they've learned they can move the boundary.
Yeah.
And now they're going to start to fight to move boundaries even more. That's one thing that I noticed. I love that you've said that
Yeah.
pre-planning is important. The second thing too, I'm sure you'll agree, is children will not starve themselves necessarily. So I've had parents who say, if I don't give into what they want, my child will never eat.
Yeah.
So I have them sit down and write a little food journal of everything they offered the child, what they didn't want and what they did want. And when parents do that, they realize, okay, they're not eating the food that I'm giving them,
Yeah.
but between the cookies, the goldfish crackers, the ice cream, all these things they've had in a day, they're full. They've
Yeah.
eaten so much, but it's all been on their own, terms.
Yeah.
So I love that some
Exactly.
of the things you brought up is being proactive. So you're not faced with these,
Yeah.
split moment decisions of, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do right here?
No, and if you know that, like, I don't know, you said the goldfish cracker, and that's just like the example that I hear from all my clients. Your kids love them. Perfect. I have nothing against goldfish cracker. But again, be proactive. You decide when it's on the menu so that you're in charge. You control that. You're not hit with like constant, can I have goldfish crackers? I don't want this. I want this. You've taken charge of this. Now, if they don't want to eat it, that's their problem. It's not yours, but that's it. You've been proactive so that you don't have to always say no, no, no. That's when you feel mean, right? Or
Yeah.
that's when you're exhausted. We're all exhausted at dinner time. I don't want to argue with you over goldfish cracker. So again, I'm going to decide the menu, put it sometimes, other times it's not on the menu. And that's, again, like you said, being consistent. your
Mhm.
kids are going to like learn this very quickly. Just like
That's
they
right.
learn that if they ask and you always give something else, that works. So
That's right.
again, kind of assessing what's going on and how can we shift your energy and your efforts towards stuff that are going to give you the end results that you wish, be
I
that they
love
sit
that.
at the table or that they eat certain foods or whatnot. And that's again very specific for different families. But yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, I know that some parenting tools out there is the when and then approach.
Yeah.
So kind of like not so much bribery, but can you use a when and then approach when it comes to food? Can you say to your child, when you eat your dinner, then you can have your goldfish crackers or your snack or your dessert? Is that an approach, or is it more just be consistent across the board and be fun?
Yes, that's a really good question. And thanks for asking that because I know a lot of parents really struggle with that. And we really want to use food for what it is, for something to nourish ourselves, to be enjoyed, to be embraced and connect over at a meal, and not so much to dictate or get a specific behavior, eating other foods to get, the dessert or the ice cream or the goldfish cracker, because that will give it an importance that we just don't want to have. And that's really to prevent anything like disordered eating, poor body image, poor relationship to food. And that's very a slippery slope. So I really want from the get-go to just treat food for what it is. It's a goldfish cracker. It's not a treat, it's not junk, it's not a sweet, it's a goldfish cracker. It's an ice cream cone. And when you serve it on the menu, you've decided that it was appropriate, that you felt comfortable. Maybe for you it's every month, maybe for me it's every week. No one to judge, but that you're in charge and you feel comfortable, so that if your child decides to eat the ice cream at that meal, really you shouldn't be uncomfortable with that because you've put it on the menu. And the other thing is that we want to give the opportunities for our kids to eat all sorts of food and to learn all sorts of food, because they will be exposed to goldfish cracker and ice cream and Coke and all of that type of food one way or another at one point in their life. And we want to give them the tool to know what to do around these foods, not just the broccoli and like, the carrots, all sorts of foods, so that they have the opportunity to learn with you around them as a secure kind of presence. And also, if we never offer it, or if it's really like banned from the house, the first thing they're going to do is go crazy, the other way of the like pendulum, right? So we really want to make sure that they're in the middle and that they don't go only eat that, but also never eat that. Just in the middle, so that ice cream is not that special. Like we have it from time to time, just like we have broccoli from time to time, and just like we have chocolate chips
Yeah.
cookie and
That's
whatnot.
great.
Yeah.
That's so important because I know I speak for myself. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching and listening that feel the same. But I mean, I have a very bad relationship with food. And I learned that from my upbringing, who
Yeah.
learned that from their upbringing.
Yeah.
And I passed that down onto my kids. And now I'm learning in my adult years of how to have a relationship with food. So if we can learn from someone like you on how to change our thinking around food and have a better relationship with it, you're not spending your life weighing yourself on the scale or
Yeah.
weighing your food. You actually just enjoying it and not also embellishing or going overboard on it. So
Yeah.
I think it's so important what you teach, because as parents, many of us don't know. We're
No.
just teaching what we learned as kids ourselves. So it's
Yeah.
great to learn that there's, a way of doing this that can work with us, but can break that cycle of bad
Yeah.
relationship with food with our kids.
Yeah. And
That's
it's never
amazing.
too late to break that as well. Just because you brought the topic, like, we've all been raised with parents who've done different things. They did their best. And maybe like, that's it. You have a 5-year-old and you're like, oh shoot, I've been doing this for 5 years. It's too late. It's not too late. So get in touch. It's never too late. Be 6 months, 5 years, 18 years, even above that, right? So it's
Yeah.
never too late to kind of free yourself from that pressure. And I really wish that for all of us, because food is delicious and it's great connection, and we want that for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you teach that, because I think it's a valuable lesson for us all to learn, and even
Yeah.
to realize what we're passing down to our kids, right? To
Yeah.
not have this awful relationship with food. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing that. So any tips, any quick tips that you could think of in terms of not having a picky eater?
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
Okay. So if you parent with someone else, first of all, being on the same page, and that's really easy said, it's a bit more difficult to execute, but get the help, because that's really powerful for not feeling alone, for not having tension or resentment over your partner, and also to share one consistent message to your kids. That's really powerful. So I would say that would be my tip number one. Make sure that you discuss your parenting strategies, what is important, what are your values, traditions you want to pass on. So I kind of laid a foundation for everything that you're going to do from now on. Tip number two would be very practical. Get yourself a routine. And Debbie, the routine is key. Not like a very like rigid, structured, like, it has to be at like that exact time, but so that kids can know what to expect and that it's consistent, and that's very securing for them. They feel safe, they know what to expect. They're not wondering if food is going to come or you're going to feed them. They know we play, we eat, we nap, we eat, like, that type of kind of structure. That's really helpful for kids, because we cannot trust them to tell us if they are hungry or not. They do have the feelings, but they don't yet know the wording and putting the sensation with the wordings to voice that to us. So we really want to let their actions speak. If we put food in front of them and they don't eat, they are full, they're not hungry. That we can conclude. But if we say, are you hungry? Like, is it snack time? Are you hungry? They don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They don't know. So you
Well,
cannot.
that's part of those boundaries too that you talked
Yeah.
about earlier, where if they know what we're going to eat lunch and then we're going to play for a little bit and then we're going to go take a nap and then we're going to wake up and have a snack, they kind of know what to expect in their day. And consistency and routine is so crucial with little children of all ages. It doesn't matter if they're, 8 months or 8 years or 18 or 80. It doesn't matter. It's so important.
Yeah.
That's great.
So get yourself a structure or routine, something that fits, and something that fits for your family. Like, don't try to emulate someone else's routine. Find your own and try different things. And again, get help if you need to, but get your own routine. Number three, that's a tricky one. What would I say? I think I would say get back in control of what you serve. What is the menu? It's up to you to decide. So enough of asking kids, what do you want to eat? Of course, they're going to say whatever random things come to their head, and that's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
It could
and
be
as
just
they
a
get
phrase.
older, they're going to just say anything anyway. So
Right.
might as well start to have a menu from the get-go.
So get a menu that you feel comfortable, be that it's respecting your budget, you know how to cook, it's not too long for your schedule, or you're like, if you're busy working, and get slowly a bank of menus or something that will provide that kind of structure to you. And that from time to time, you have your favorites, you have your kids' favorite, you have your partner's favorite foods in there, so that it's not always just catering to your child, because that's really the first mistake. You cater to your child one meal, and then before you know, you're making always two meals. And that's really, it's not hard to reverse, but just prevent that from the get-go. Get yourself a menu so that you don't like arrive at 6 p.m. at home and you're like, oh my God, what are we going to eat? Ask your kid, they say like ice cream, and you're like, that's not helpful. Now you're frustrated, you don't have a plan, it's a catastrophe. So menu, it doesn't have to be fancy, it can be from like prepared stuff, frozen things, canned stuff, it doesn't matter, just something that you have a plan.
That's good. Well, I'm blown away with all the information you provide. I'm blown away with everything I learn from you every time we're together. 22 years later, I still learn so much from you. And I remember we had done an event together and you had a bunch of plates set up on the table with an idea of different meals that you would serve kids. And the idea of the meals was unique, but what I was intrigued by was the quantity on the plate. And I think this goes very nicely with this topic of picky eaters. Some parents think their kids are picky because of the quantity they're eating. And when I saw your plates kind of set up, and I'm like, wow, that's not a lot of food. I forced my child to eat like 3 times that amount.
Yeah.
And they were not being picky. They were just full. So that sometimes just knowing how much or how to judge, like that was amazing. That was really eye-opening to see that. So I know that you teach these types of things one-on-one with parents to really give them those visuals of this is really all your child needs to eat. And if they ate that, they're good. Don't force anymore. So thank you for even sharing that.
Yeah, that could be tip number 4. Stop trying to force your child to take one more bite, or like, no, it's never going to work, and it's going to ruin that nice moment at the table.
Yeah. And again, it leads to that bad relationship with food, because I always learned you finish all the food on your plate.
Yeah.
right? You have to finish what's on your plate. And even now, if I leave a little bite on my plate, I feel guilty about leaving
Yeah,
that there. So, quantity, I think, is a really important thing when you're teaching good relationship with food, that respect your body. And if you're full, you're
exactly.
full,
Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. So before we wrap up, I want you to share with everyone one unique thing about you, something we might not know or be able to find on your website, something about you.
Yeah, so that's in line with the topic, but I am a huge fan of Sour Kid Patch. Like, these like candies that are really sour.
Yes.
Like, I remember once I ate so many of them in a sitting that I like, actually, I think I burned my tongue. And it was just like the most, yeah, extreme thing. I was like, this is just so good. It tastes so delicious to me. And yeah, they have always been my favorite candies. And like, if there's some around, for sure I have to taste them.
Oh my
Just
God.
so
I'm so
delicious.
happy you shared that, because that means we're allowed to eat candy. We just can't have
Absolutely.
it all the time.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. It's good to know that even the registered dietitian that knows everything about nutrition is still eating candy. That makes me feel
Yeah.
really good.
Without guilt.
Without guilt. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Maude, for sharing all this information. I'm so blessed to have a relationship with you. I love you so much. Share with everybody where they can come and find you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so grateful to be in your village of expert. I love that. How we support parents together. So we can find us at our website. So our company is named Family and Co Nutrition. So the website is www.familyandconutrition.com. Specifically for picky eaters, come join us on Instagram. So we are at picky.eating.kids. We share a lot of tips. Come say hi. Come say that it's terrible at your house. We're going to help you. Stop suffering in silence. Come connect with us. We'd
I
love
love
that.
that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. Everyone, have a great day. Bye bye.